A new way of marketing drugs to physicians is gaining momentum via the internet that may reach more doctors and may even be more convenient to those who either don't like or don't want the traditional pharmaceutical industry pitches. It's called e-sampling. You're listening to ReachMD Radio on XM 160, the channel for medical professionals. I'm Bruce Japsen, the healthcare reporter with the Chicago Tribune, and joining me today is Donato Tramuto. Mr. Tramuto is Chief Executive Officer and Vice Chairman of Physicians Interactive Holdings. He has nearly 30 years of healthcare experience in both the product and service segments of healthcare. Prior to joining Physicians Interactive in 2006, he served as CEO of i3, a global pharmaceutical services company that is part of Nginx, a subsidiary of health insurance giant United Health Group. Tramuto serves on the Duke University Fuqua Healthcare Advisory Board, and he joins us today from his offices in Boston. Donald Tramuto, welcome to ReachMD Radio on XM 160, the channel for medical professionals.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Well, it's so good to have you here, and it's always exciting in healthcare when we can talk about sort of new technologies and new innovation to, make people's lives a little simpler, and physicians in particular. So if you could tell us a little bit about Physicians Interactive and generally, how can physicians look forward to be marketed to in the future when it comes to drugs and even devices?
Thank you very, very much. And maybe it's probably very important to kind of just define from my perspective, what I see as the trends in healthcare and why what we're doing at Physicians Interactive really intersects very well. I really do believe that there are two trends that are occurring in healthcare today, and one is the evidence-based medicine side of it. How do we get, if you will, the right information into the hands of the providers who ultimately have to make decisions in terms of how they treat patients, and how that intersects with the second trend, and that is the communication vehicle between providers and patients. And I think that's where we fit in. Certainly at Physicians Interactive, we have been known for the last 10 years as the largest provider of alternative methods of education in terms of how physicians receive information about products. You mentioned in the beginning, Bruce, the sampling side of it. We just acquired a company here now about 1 month ago that expands even further our educational vehicles into providing, if you will, online the ability for physicians to select samples. And it's all about being able to reach that audience when they want to be educated or when they want to order samples in a venue that they select and at a time when they want the information. And so it's really exciting, and I think that as we gain more knowledge about physicians through the evidence-based medicine side, we'll continue to use these vehicles to communicate to them.
Well, could you, if you will, walk us through perhaps how a physician might be getting information today and how you envision this? Because I know this is sort of evolving and there are potentially other applications, but if you could give us some examples as to how this may work for physicians, because let's face it, they're busy people, and increasingly, they might not even have time to meet with salespeople as they have in the past.
Well, it's a very good question, and I think that today what we recognize is that the way physicians really enter into our programs today is that they opt in. And so we reach out to them, we let them know that this service is available, and they opt in to learn more about a specific pharmaceutical drug agent. And in the course of doing that, what our vision is to create as many services while they are online with us, to create as many services as we can possibly create to allow them to select various transactional opportunities. So, for example, if they're online learning about drug A, our hope is that they can also select samples for that specific drug. And at the same time, we may very well alert them about any safety issues that might be out there with any recent news that has come out from the FDA. And so it's really an opportunity to meet them where they want to meet. My hope is as we expand further that we'll provide other channels of communication. For example, the mobile, as you know, is a very, very big opportunity to get that information conveyed to physicians. But right now, basically, it's being done on the desktop for us.
Well, and if you could, so like today, it might be something, let's just say they're at a medical conference or a pharmaceutical rep says, there's a new drug on the market. Here's a clinical study, doctor, that you might want to read. And down at the bottom, there's the side effects or whatever. But if it's in e-sampling and sort of e-marketing, how does that work? If you could paint us a picture, do they get an emailed pitch and then different things pop up at them, or the information is highlighted in red, or you're just sort of envisioning that if you could put a picture in our minds?
You mentioned conventions. That's a great segue into another offering that we have, is that we work with our pharmaceutical companies that if in fact there is a convention and there is some new information about a respective drug, we work with the pharmaceutical company to develop that information. And then while the physicians are on the conference or they're attending the conference, we then invite them to stop over and interact online with the product that we have developed or the information that we have developed so that they get the educational pieces that they need. My goal is, and we'll probably have this in play in the next number of months because we are looking at additional acquisitions, is being able to beam into their mobiles, if you will, that information. As you know, a lot of physicians are carrying mobiles now, and they like the mobile in terms of content and education. And so we're trying to take the technology to a new level. The other, option that we have is that as we work with pharmaceutical companies, because we have worked with physicians and we have developed value propositions for those physicians, they've opted in to our Physicians Interactive portal, if you will. And by inviting them, they then, get an alert, they get a scheduled invite, and then they attend it at the time that they would like to take the program. And if it is a program about education on drug A, they opt in, they're invited in, and they then connect to the program through their own kind of desktop.
And they can do this literally at any time, day or night.
You got it. And, the only perspective that I think is going to change here is that we believe that it should not only be on the desktop. My hope is that if a physician is, at a supermarket and they have 5 minutes to spare and they want to learn about drug A, they can then use their mobile. And think about if they're in their office and we just got some latest information about a safety concern, we want to be able to send them that e-alert, get the information to them in real time.
Yeah, so it's a BlackBerry or a phone, and they're getting a buzz, and rather than some people having to hear about it or read about it in the newspaper or on television, they're getting the communication more than likely from the FDA or the drug company, correct?
Well, the old-fashioned way of doing it, of course, is mailing it, right? And, the toughest part, Bruce, you never know whether or not they opened it. At least with our system, we know if they opened it. We know that they accessed it, and we don't know if they read it, but, our hope is that if you have access and you opened it, there's a pretty good indication that you've read it. So I think this is going to just create a safer drug environment that I know we're all kind of aspiring to, but I also think it goes back to how I started off the point around the trends. It's getting the information to the physicians in a way that is fast, in a way that helps them to be better in terms of what they do in their treatments of patients.
If you're just joining us, or even if you're new to our channel, you're listening to the Clinicians Roundtable on ReachMD Radio on XM 160, the channel for medical professionals. I'm Bruce Japsen, the healthcare reporter with the Chicago Tribune, and joining me today is Donato Tramuto, who is the CEO of Physicians Interactive, and we're talking about e-sampling and ways to get information to physicians online. And Mr. Tramuto, we were just talking about this whole idea of safety with medications, and if you could just tell us a little bit about the way physicians find out about unsafe medications today or in the past might have been a letter or something as slow as in the mail, but what you're telling us with some of the technology you guys have is that this could be something that would be more real time with information from the FDA or the drug maker, a buzz in their pants pocket that's their BlackBerry going off.
You hit it right on, Bruce, and the traditional way, and it's been done for years, around that duty to warn and that duty to inform, when there is a challenge or a safety concern that has surfaced about a drug, the FDA, as you know, will inform the pharmaceutical company, and the pharmaceutical company has an obligation to inform physicians, and they normally have done that through a mass mailing. And that does complete their obligation. But what we have always been certainly looking at is, are those letters reaching the physicians? And I think that what we're hoping now, as physicians register onto our system, as they, participate in our programs, we will have that ability then to send them these safety alerts in real time. And we'll also have the ability to know, did they open it up? And that will do more than just fulfill one's obligation. We now know that they actually opened the email. So I think the technology here today is just going to go a long way to create, if you will, a safer drug environment for all of us.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, too, because one of the problems in the wake of the whole Vioxx issue and some of the drug safety scares has been the fact that there was not a lot of reporting of adverse events. And so if we're getting information out, once we find out about adverse events through the sort of emails and e-sampling and various things you talk about, is there a way to sort of turn this around at some point, and perhaps the physicians can turn around and let your people know problems that they see?
Well, it's another great question. As you know, less than 5% of all adverse events are even reported to the FDA, and I know that this safety area is an area that I've spent a lot of time with during my United Health days. And so we are working with even the electronic health record companies, Allscripts, as you know, previously owned Physicians Interactive, and we see a huge opportunity to work with physicians at the point of care in terms of communicating back to the FDA when they have identified an adverse reaction. What we're doing is once an adverse reaction or a safety signal has been validated as a real concern, then the obligation and responsibility is in the pharmaceutical company's hands to inform and alert those physicians, and that's where we kick in. We're really that communication piece. We're not in a position to identify signals, but I do think, to your point, that other technology vehicles like the electronic health record will be in a very good position to communicate those signals back to the FDA. And then, of course, there's a lot of, just because you have a signal doesn't mean you have a safety concern. There's a lot of work that goes into determining whether or not that signal really is a concern. But we are the communication vehicle that can get that information back to physicians.
Well, and Physicians Interactive, I know, has developed more than 1,000 online programs for 150 brands from dozens of pharmaceutical and biotech companies. Could you tell us, how, I know this is still sort of in its early stages, how many physicians are getting this kind of information or of online, like either e-sampling or whatever? What's the market out there now? And I'm sure the sky's the limit, but where are we at in this?
It's a very good question, and it depends, obviously. What I can say to you is that we have about 170,000 physicians that have registered with Physicians Interactive. These are unique registrants who have opted in and who have made a commitment to participate in programs. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to participate in every program, correct? But what we find is normally it varies depending on the brand, depending on the product, depending on the need for the physician. But I think one can say the greater volume you have, my goal is to increase that 170,000 unique registrants to over 300,000, which is our goal for 2009. And important is not only informing physicians of information about pharmaceuticals and about safety alerts, it's also creating value for those physicians. And, I think I had related to you earlier, we had developed back in December when the whole Medicare changes were occurring in terms of e-prescribing, we actually reached out to our entire physician database to educate them on the changing reimbursement structure for those physicians who would use e-prescribing. And we had an enormous amount of response. So that is something we did proactively. No one paid for it. Our company paid for it. But it was a way to really let physicians know that Physicians Interactive is more than just pharmaceutical kind of, relationships and information, that we're going to help them become educated about trends that are occurring in the marketplace that can help to create, if you will, a much, much stronger market presence for them.
Well, with that, I'd like to thank Donald Tramuto, who's been our guest. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Physicians Interactive, and we've been talking about e-sampling and e-prescribing and ways of marketing and educating physicians online. My name is Bruce Japsen of the Chicago Tribune, and I've been your host, and you've been listening to the Clinicians Roundtable on ReachMD Radio on XM 160, the channel for medical professionals. ReachMD, online, on demand, and on the air. Please visit us at reachmd.com, and I'd like to thank you today for listening.